Hello everyone. On December 31st of 2002, the Vancouver Police Department would receive an anonymous letter confessing the death of a woman on Vancouver's downtown Eastside. While the name of the victim was never mentioned in the letter, police suspected it could be connected to a recent disappearance of a young woman from that exact area. 24-year-old Danielle LaRue was born in 1977 to her father Norman, an ancestor to the hereditary chiefs of the Nisconlith, which is part of the Shuswap First Nation. Her mother was an unnamed Caucasian woman. Danielle grew up in northern British Columbia with her younger siblings Kim and Norman Jr. But to understand how Danielle ended up where she did, I think we need to dive into her family's past. Being born into a hereditary chief's family is compared to being born into royalty. It's said to mean both respect and the responsibility of looking after others. Even after the Canadian government did away to the hereditary system, the LaRues continued to lead their people. Danielle's great-great-grandfather was the first to be elected, followed by his son. Danielle's grandfather was elected, and then eventually her father Norman was. But like so many other things in Norman's life, nothing was simple. His election would end up being overturned by the Federal Indian Affairs Department. This was said to be due to voting irregulations. Norman was born on a reservation outside of Chase, British Columbia. His father was a Second World War veteran. However, his mother was murdered when he was still an infant. Norman lived with his grandparents before packing off to the Indian residential school in Kamloops. Like the many children there, he was abused, and eventually was among the first to sign on to the class action lawsuit against the government for the systematic abuse perpetrated in residential schools. But it wasn't only at school that Norman was abused. When he was only 12 years old, Norman and his father spent an entire summer binging on alcohol. The story goes that Norman often blacked out, but before he did, he would often beat anyone that got in his way, and so his life ebbed and flowed. Sober, Norman was acknowledged by everyone to be articulate, charming, brilliant even. Drunk, he was violent and dangerous. His rap sheet grew about the same pace as his list of accomplishments. In the 1960s, he started a free medical clinic for the Skid Row residents of Kamloops. He spearheaded Native civil rights movements in BC, with the formation of the Native Alliance for Red Power in 1996. He was a boxing coach, and for a while he even worked as a CBC reporter. And by the end of his life, he began gaining some recognition as an artist. Danielle, Kim, and Norman Jr. were only separated in age by about 4 years. When they were little, their dad studied business administration in Spokane, Washington. But in the 1980s, they moved back to Kamloops, and Norman resumed drinking, and drinking a lot. When he was drunk, he was described as being wildly abusive to his children and his wife. However, the kid's mother also had issues with drinking as well as prescription pills, and they never really knew what version of her they were going to get that day. It's also said that she took the majority of her anger out on Danielle. Despite that, one of the only happy times that Danielle's grandmother can remember for her was at her parents' wedding. Eventually, Norman's wife left him, sobered up, and became an addictions counselor. She was described as being too young to be a good mother, so I'm not sure how old she truly was, but by then it was too late for the children. Danielle was the first to go to foster care. Kim and her younger brother went to live with their grandparents, who tried their best to give the children happy times. But eventually they also ended up in foster homes as well. Kim remembered a particularly abusive one in northern BC when she was 8 years old and Norman Jr. was 7. And at one point, to protect her siblings, Danielle even tried to kidnap them. At only 10 years old, she was described as being fierce. In that instance, she held the foster parents at bay and even the police for a while. Eventually, though, several officers were said to subdue her, and then she was forced to let her siblings go. Just a few years later, though, in February of 1989, their father Norman was charged with second-degree murder after a man named Larry Maristi was found in the doorway of Norman's one-room shack in Kamloops. Larry's skull had been fractured 5 times by repeated blows with a baseball bat after the two men had been drinking for 2 days straight. Both had blood alcohol levels reading 3 times the legal driving limits at the time. In September of that year, Norman's conviction was overturned, and in the fall of 1991, after a newspaper ran one version of the story about what happened the night of the murder, the judge would declare a mistrial. It wouldn't be until 1992, that just a few weeks before the trial was set to begin, that the Crown would stay the charges. This was due to 2 witnesses as well as an RCMP officer passing away. There was also another witness that was no longer in Canada, meaning that Norman was essentially allowed to walk free. By the early 1990s, when Danielle was just barely a teenager, I think she was only 13 years old actually, she would run away from her foster home to live on the streets of Prince George as a homeless youth. And sadly, Danielle's childhood was worse than I've already described. Danielle was said to be a victim of both physical and SA as a child. Her sister Kim would say that she was specifically physically and SA'd in every way a child could be. Home was never safe for her. As a child, no parent, social worker, police officer, lawyer, or law ever protected her. And eventually she would turn to drugs to ease that pain. And to pay for those drugs, she would turn to sex work. Danielle, who went by the nickname Holy Smoke as given to her by her grandfather as a child, was noted to never have a pimp. Kim also said that Danielle only ever had one serious boyfriend when she was around 16 years old, but after that, it was described that she kept her boyfriends like pets. She'd take care of them for a while, and when she got bored, she'd move on to the next. That one serious boyfriend she had in her mid-teens is thought to be the only boyfriend that she ever truly loved. However, their relationship was extremely toxic. It was said that he beat her, took her money, and left her dope sick. Despite her circumstances, Danielle is remembered as adventurous but reserved, quiet, and polite around family. A spitfire who was desperately protective of her younger sister and brother who were badly in need of someone to look after them. When Kim eventually also ran away at only 13 years old, she remembers Danielle and her boyfriend taking her to their well-furnished apartment in Prince George. Kim said she was also very lucky to not be a victim of the Highway of Tears due to how often she would hitchhike up and down British Columbia. But soon after Kim moved in, Danielle would discover heroin, and she would begin selling items in their nice home to pay for her addiction. Despite Danielle trying to protect her sister from that world, Kim would eventually also start using. Kim saying, quote, "I can't say that anything could have saved her. When you're abused to the extent that she was as a child, I don't think anything can help. That's why I think anybody who hurts or molests a child should be killed, because that child never gets over it. Some kids live as normally as they can be, but they never get over it." End quote. I think this case truly outlines how things that happen to children can progress and lead to situations like this. Obviously, it doesn't happen to everyone. Obviously, everyone's circumstances are different. But when someone is stuck into a situation like this as a child, where there is abuse, where there is neglect to this severity, it just continues to spiral. And I think it's very powerful what Kim said, because especially in Canada, our justice system is very lax when it comes to crime. And all of this stuff happened to Danielle, and it's something that she will never forget, yet her abusers essentially would have only gotten a slap on the wrist. We have to really remember that Danielle was a child when she ran away, and then Kim was as well. 13 years old is so young to be fending for yourself in a city. It's so young to be taken advantage of. And if she was selling herself at that young of an age, every single one of those individuals should have been charged. Yet, most likely, that will never happen. When Danielle was 19 years old, their mother would die from cancer, and her search to numb the pain would land her in Vancouver's notorious downtown Eastside, which is described as a big black pit with stabbings, murders, and ODs where nobody cares about anything but themselves and their next fix. It's an area of Canada that we've spoken extensively of this channel, and of the women who are murdered or go missing there. And we have spoken about many teens that travel over there and go missing as well, that get sucked in to the darkness that is Vancouver's East Side. Meanwhile, their father Norman's art was featured at Kamloops Art Gallery, and a local company with business in Japan would commission him to carve 6 totem poles, paying him a $5,000 advance, which he celebrated by taking heroin. Eventually, on February 24th of 2000, Norman would pass away of an overdose at only 59 years old. Danielle was 21 and Kim 19. Both were addicted to drugs and selling their bodies on the street while doing minor crimes to support their habits. Their brother Norman Jr. was said to be a violent alcoholic who was declared a long-term offender at only 21 years old. All 3 of them would actually appear in court at the same time at one point. Norman Jr. was said to be so violent, in fact, that in December of 2000, when a 23-year-old woman who was coming out of an alcoholic blackout refused to sleep with him, Norman was said to slash her throat with enough force to break the knife in 2. Now, thankfully, this woman did not die. She actually recovered. But Norman was convicted of aggravated SA. In 2002, Kim was arrested after Kamloops police received a phone call about a woman watering a neighbor's roof. Her, along with 5 others, ended up being charged with a variety of offenses, including possession of stolen property and improper storage of firearms. Her final arrest would be for armed robbery. Kim says that she went to court so high that she can't even recall if she pled guilty for the armed robbery or to a lesser charge. All she knows is that she went to jail. And thankfully, Danielle's reputation as a fearsome fighter kept her safe when she was there, because no one was going to mess with Danielle's little sister. Keep in mind, these kids grew up only knowing hurt, violence, and dependency on substances. They never felt safe. And again, I think this case is a very good example about kind of the snowball effect of what can happen. And for kids like this, institutions like prison is a second home to them. You know, they have somewhere safe to sleep. They get 3 meals a day. They have, medical attention there if they need it at their whim. They have friends. They can play games. They have a social life there. And they do all that, and then eventually they're released again, and then they get sent on a bus straight back down to where they came from in the downtown of Vancouver's Eastside, to start the cycle all over again. But after Danielle moved to Vancouver, her family would eventually lose contact with her. She'd occasionally call her sister Kim collect to chat and ask for money, but she wouldn't see her sister for years. It's thought that around the end of November in 2002, a now 24-year-old Danielle would drop off the face of the earth. The exact time and the exact place is completely unknown. It's very unclear. The last known sighting of Danielle, who she was last with, all of that information, if police know, they have never released, but it seems like no one really does. And due to her transient lifestyle, it has made this case extremely difficult. But what is thought is that she did disappear from Vancouver's downtown east side. However, no missing persons report would ever be made, at least not at the immediate start of when she disappeared, and not even for months, it seems. We don't know when she was even last seen. Was it even the end of November, or could it have been sooner or later than that? Who was she last with? What was she last doing? It wouldn't be until December 31st, New Year's Eve that year, that an anonymous letter would be dropped off at Vancouver's Police Department's public service counter. The letter discussed the disappearance and death of a Vancouver sex trade worker, reading, quote, "To police. I sent message about this to Vancouver police a few days after incident, but have seen nothing in news about it. I'm guessing they either didn't receive it or can't match info to victim. So here's letter again with additional information. This is about Vancouver prostitute who disappeared at end of November 2002. Don't remember name she gave me. Had no ID. Sounded like she had just recently come to Vancouver. Caucasian, long black curly hair, jeans, black leather jacket, tattoos and jewelry. She is dead. I sent this info so you can notify her family. If you can, please make mention of her name in Vancouver Sun. I would like to know who she was. To her family, I am more sorry for this than you can imagine. I did not intend this, but I am still responsible. I wish I could take it back, but can't. She will not be unmourned. Have brought flowers to her grave once already. Plan to do so every year as I'm able. Not ideal, but better than no visits at all. I know you can't forgive me, but please believe I tried my hardest to bring her back." Police have never released the full letter. Part of it is redacted, as you can see. And while the author never mentions the victim by name, investigators are convinced that the person that they're referring to is Danielle. I'm not sure how they even connected this letter to Danielle or how they even realized she may have been missing, because again, it's unclear if a missing persons report was ever made, when it was placed, but once police got this letter, they eventually connected it to being Danielle possibly. Like so many women before and after Danielle to go missing from Vancouver's downtown east side, her case wasn't widely reported on until the spring of 2003, when a reporter for the Vancouver Sun named Daphne Bramham would point out that very fact, writing, quote, "Someone's young daughter goes missing and it's front page news. Someone's 20-something daughter goes missing from Vancouver's downtown east side, and it doesn't rate even a small item in a single mainstream or daily newspaper in the lower mainland. It doesn't rate even though more than 60 women have disappeared from there over the past 2 decades. It doesn't rate even though Robert Willie Picton will be back in court on June 30th, when the preliminary hearing resumes into the charges that he murdered 16 of these women. Why doesn't anybody seem to care that 25-year-old Danielle LaRue has been missing since December? And why is it that police waited more than 4 months after first hearing that she disappeared before asking the public for help finding her?" End quote. Constable Sarah Bloor would only tell reporters on May 12th of that year that Danielle was missing and that an alert was going to be issued. Keep in mind that according to the letter, she had been missing for like 6 months at that point. Police speaking out to the perpetrator saying, quote, "You know what happened to Danielle, where her body is buried, and you seem to be remorseful. It's time to do the right thing and finally bring answers and closure for Danielle's family. It's been 16 years, and it's time to clear your conscience and come forward." End quote. Danielle's older half-brother, Jules LaRue, has chosen to remain hopeful that his sister is still alive out there somewhere, saying that if it hasn't been signed and it hasn't been verified to them, it's just hearsay, and they don't really think about that letter in the first place. Kim believes that if her sister did die, that she would have put up a fight. But she is haunted by not knowing what happened and the fact that her body has never been found. As of 2008, after leaving jail, Kim was able to escape Vancouver's downtown after her boyfriend at the time booked them tickets out of British Columbia. She was completing a methadone program, her first ever steady job, and had dreams of studying law at university. She also participated in an episode of Taken featuring Danielle's story. But decades later, the writer of that letter has still never been caught, and some even believe that it was a hoax. We do have to keep in mind that I'm not sure if police even have exact proof that this letter is about Danielle or if they're just assuming it is. I really want to know how they have solid proof that it's connected to Danielle's disappearance, which is kind of what I think her brother Jules is saying. It does make me wonder, what does the rest of that letter say? What is in the redacted portion that police don't want out there? Clearly it's something that they're trying to keep close to the vest in case they find the person so that they're able to connect that letter to them. But what does that letter say? There must be something in there that truly makes them believe it was Danielle. And from the sounds of the letter, if it is true, it sounds like the person that wrote it may be remorseful, like police said, that they tried to save her. So it makes me wonder, could it have been an OD then? It seems like the writer felt bad after the fact, or could it have been a drug-fueled rage that led to her death, and when they sobered up, they realized what they'd done and felt bad? And from the sounds of the letter as well, they buried her somewhere where they continue to visit her. So if this letter is true, there is a lot of information in it. But either way, at the end of the day, Danielle still needs to be found. She still needs justice, and her family still needs answers. We have to remember she was only 24 years old when she disappeared. She was so young, and she had gone through so much in her short life. And the fact that her case wasn't properly investigated at the start because she was transient, so it seems like no one really knew she was missing for a long period of time. Her perpetrator could have done anything to her. They could have taken her anywhere. They had so much free reign to do so because no one was looking for them. No one even knew she was missing. The best case scenario is that she did pick up and go somewhere else, and she traveled somewhere else, and she started a new life somewhere. So let's take a good look at Danielle one more time in case that is true. Danielle is described as an Indigenous woman standing 5'7" tall, weighing around 128 pounds, with long brown hair and brown eyes. She had a slash-marked scar on her right forearm, a scar on her right arm, a black heart tattoo on her torso, black hearts tattooed on her chest, a heart and sword on her right forearm, and a cross on her right arm. If you have any information as to what may have happened to Danielle and where her body may be buried, or if you think you may have spotted her somewhere, please contact the authorities. I'll have the information down below. Please give this family answers. It has been decades too long. And we need to continue to talk about these cases. We need to continue to spread the word about these cases because we can't allow stories like Danielle's to be forgotten. Danielle was a person. She was a human. And she also deserves to be found despite her circumstances and despite where her life led her. As always, I hope you all stay safe out there, lock your windows and doors, and I hope to see you in the next video.